Here is our second lesson, and it's what we're doing on color mixing. So we have the same colors that we've had for the last week. We've got our red, yellow, and blue. And so the very first thing we're gonna do is just get some of our red and kind of making like a color wheel. Don't worry about it being super fancy. This is just gonna be in your sketchbook. So we're just practicing getting some color down, getting used to how much water we use. I did make myself a little circle because it's a little bit harder to make a circle when it's this big. Okay, so I'm gonna rinse my brush really well, and I'm gonna go for my yellow. Now yellow is not right next to it on the color wheel. We've got orange in between, so come like this. Use the water to blend it around where I need to go. Okay, then our last color is blue. Rinse your brush really well. And blue is going to be right here in the middle. I'm not having my points touch, just so that they won't bleed. I don't want to have to wait for anything to dry. Okay. So I don't need a super even color here. I'm not really worried about that. Okay, so when we're doing our mixing, start with your lightest first, always. So we're gonna mix yellow, and in my pan, I'm just bringing some of the yellow out. I can't ever start mixing over here. It just makes a big old mess. So bring your yellow out, tiny bit of red to start, because you need so much more yellow than you do red to make an orange. Okay, so we've got our orange right there. And you're gonna have probably a different color of orange than me. It all depends on how much you have of each, of red and yellow, and that's fine. The point is just to get an orange in here. I'm going really close to the edges without actually touching, so that I don't have all the bleeding. Okay, now we're mixing yellow and blue. So again, move your yellow out first. And you use way more yellow, and the tiniest little drop of blue gets you a green. Tiny, tiny, tiny. Legend, I'm making a video, so please be quiet. And again, your green will probably be a different color than mine. Okay, last one. And this time you need to bring red out first, because red is the lighter color. And again, the tiniest bit of blue. I don't feel like that was enough blue, so we'll do tiny, tiny bit again. And there's my purple. So this is easy enough. You all know how to mix your colors, I'm sure. So now that we have these colors, Okay, now that we have this, we can move on to the next step. Next, we're gonna work on a little bit of a ombre or a gradual change from one color to the next. We've done this before with just the same color. We did the dark to light in the same color. This time we're gonna do it with different colors. So I'm gonna start with yellow first where it's lighter, and I'm gonna go yellow to red. So I'm just making some color, and then I'm gonna get the red and come here. I'm leaving space for it to be orange. And instead of actually using the orange that I made, I'm going to mix these on my paper to be orange. So that doesn't have enough yellow. So I'm bringing more yellow over. So this is just, you don't always have to mix it in your pan first. It depends on what you're doing. Okay, so I want you to try and do that. And you've got your gradual change from yellow to red. Okay, so now we're gonna do the same thing from yellow to blue, and still start with yellow first. Clean your brush really well in between, especially because this blue is just so vibrant. I'm using just a lot of solid water in between, just so the color will move to where I want it to go. So I bring some blue over, really wash before I bring some yellow over. More yellow. I don't like that little. Okay, so we've kind of got a yellow to blue right there with the green. Okay, last one. We're going to do red to blue. I'm going to do red first. Blue. That's not a very saturated blue, so I'm getting more. Kind of just doing solid water in between. And even though it's solid water, it picked up that red quick, so. Okay, so moving some blue over, moving some red. Okay, so we've got our purple in the middle. Okay, so the last part of this exercise that we're going to do is learn how to make brown and black. But brown, you're going to mix all three colors, meaning the primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, but the order that you do it affects whether it goes brown or black. So for browns, you are going to start with yellow. Bring in a bunch of yellow out. I'm going to add a little bit of red, so I've got an orangey color, and then to the orange you add seriously like the smallest little bit of blue and try it out. Okay, so right here is a brown, and I'm gonna just put a little bit on my paper so you can see. But depending on what you need brown for, this is a pretty yellowy brown. So the way to change it, so you look at this color wheel and my brown is yellow. So you have to add the opposite color to kind of eliminate the yellow tint. So the opposite color here is purple. Now, if you already have purple mixed, awesome, you can use it. If you don't, you add a tiny bit of red and a tiny bit of blue. For this, we already will have it mixed, so let's just grab a tiny bit of purple and add it to this brown. So this changes the color. I'm gonna move that over a little bit more so you can see. This changed the color quite a bit. So now we've got another kind of brown. But if I look at this brown and I think that's maybe a little bit on the greenish tint, I don't like it. So I'm gonna add opposite of green, which is red, tiny bit of red to my brown. Okay, and here's another brown. And now I'm thinking, that is a very orangey brown. I don't want it to be orangey. I'm gonna add a tiny bit of the opposite, which is blue. So there are 4 colors of brown easily, and I'm just gonna do it one more time. This one is a little bit, I'm gonna say on the blue side. And if you don't see that it is that way, it doesn't matter, just play. Just play and add little bits of color as you can to change your brown. So here we go. Here's my last brown that I'm gonna do. And I added orange to that last one. Okay, so a few different browns. And obviously you can make them darker by just having more paint. Okay, so now mixing black, instead of starting with the lightest color, which we did for brown, which was yellow, we're gonna start with blue. And we're gonna grab quite a bit of blue here. Because we're making a dark color, okay? And I'm gonna really wash that out before I grab into my red, or else it's gonna contaminate it. Okay, so here's our red. See how it just got a bit darker? So this is gonna be very, very purple, if you can see how purple that is. And if you want something to not be so purple, you have to add your yellow. So it was just a tiny bit of yellow, but it takes out that purple. I might do a tiny, well, yeah, let's show you what this looks like first. So here's a black. And while that looks navy blue, the more of it that I have, the more black it will look. And the best blacks have color in them, so this is for painting anyway. Okay, so I'm gonna add a little bit more yellow this time to show how that changes. But every time I need to add more yellow, I've really gotta rinse my brush so that it doesn't contaminate my yellow. Okay, here's another black. Okay, now that's kind of a greenish black right there. So if I want to get rid of the green, I'm going to add red. Okay, now that's a very, very red black. So I'm going to go back and I'm gonna add some green. Couldn't decide if I was gonna add green or yellow, but I've already shown the yellow. Okay, let's see how this one looks. Okay, and that one is still a little bit purple, so I'm gonna add a tiny bit more yellow. But my color is really desaturating now. I've lost a lot of my blue, so it's not gonna be dark. It's just kind of a gray now, but you can show all these different tints of browns and blacks that you can get, and you just keep playing until you get the right color. But now that you know how to add it, you can get whatever color you need to. So even say that you have a purple color, but it's a little bit too far to the blue side, instead of adding red, you could maybe add a little bit of orange to even that out. Or now that you know how to use kind of the opposite color, hopefully that will help a little bit. So the last part of this exercise, I'll show you what I did in my sketchbook. So I wrote notes, and I feel like this would be helpful. So right here I say balancing colors. To balance colors, you use its opposite, which is what we did with these dark ones down here. And we mixed all these colors in the pan. But up here, we mixed these colors on the page, just by having the red, the blue, and then they kind of bleed together to make the middle color. And down here, I wrote that to make browns, you start with yellow, then you add your red, and then a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of blue. And for black, you start with a very saturated blue, also a saturated red, and then you add a tiny bit of yellow, and then go from there to make your different colors. So the project that we're doing with these, you might have seen me post on Facebook, is donuts. And the reason I chose donuts is because of all these different colors of browns and blacks that I was able to mix to do it. And so I will make a video showing how to do those, but I wanted to show something quick that I'm going to be showing in class, and I don't want you to miss this. Last week we talked about different papers and how they react different and look a little bit different. So this paper is what we use in class. Can you see? Whoops, this paper. And it's Canson. It's the same as your sketchbooks. It's the same that we've been using in class. And you can see, at least in the video, you can probably see that there's not much texture. There definitely is some, but not near as much. This is the really fancy paper I talked to you about. This is Arches. And you can probably see, even in the video, the difference in the texture. Now you can also see the way that the color reacts to it. So for example, I did these with the exact same mixes every time. So this donut and this donut are the same. And I actually like this one better. It was harder to work with, but I like the way that the paper took the color on this one better than this one. Same with these two up here. I get a lot of these inconsistent textures when I use this paper, and that's why I like it. But for something maybe a little more realistic, this might be a better option. It just shows you different options. So these textures here, these like watery textures that you can see, that's something that's kind of particular to the Canson paper. And this, I really didn't get much of that at all on the Arches. So we're going to keep using Canson on this side, but on the last day I'll definitely have some of this Arches that you can play with and see if you end up actually liking it better. So we're going to get started making these donuts, and composition really doesn't matter. We're just kind of filling the page with the donuts. So I'm going to start, I've just got this brown already mixed. So I'm just going to do a quick outline. And get my center in there. And since my color is kind of fading, I'm being really light with my brush. I'm going to make these little highlight shapes that I'm going to use around the outside. I'm going to go in with my darker color again, just on the outside, to keep it wet. And then I'm going to use just water to blend that out, because I want the very edges to be the darkest. And then right where this highlight ring is should be the lightest, meaning it's the top of the donut. And so this stuff over here is kind of dried enough that I'm not able to really move it much. So I'm going to get dark again and go around the outside, and then I'll be able to use that to blend out. So inside these little round shapes I made, I'm going to just leave those white for now. So I'm going to get dark again and go around the inside. And I'm going to make that a little bit smaller. And I don't want my donuts, outside or inside, to be super perfectly round. I think that it looks better if they're not. So right now I've got the darkest on the insides, the very inside of the donut, the very outside of the donut, and I've filled in all the rest of the space. On this one, I'm going to do a little bit more on the outside. And if your paint is still wet, it makes it really easy to put down, and it kind of spreads on its own. For places that it doesn't, right down here, it's not really spreading, I will just get my brush wet and help it along. And now I'm going to do the same thing on the inside. I'd like that to be slightly darker also. And this is just giving the donut shape, having sorry, having the shadow like this gives it dimension and makes it actually look like the inside of the donut is going in. This is the outermost rounded part, and then it goes back in. So just to give a little shape. And then we've got these are way too stark. You can't leave them like this. So you just get plain water, and we're just gonna kind of go, you know, stroke direction does matter in this, because you'll kind of see these marks, and all it's doing is bringing some side color into those spaces. And that is just going to kind of give us a little bit of maybe a glazy type highlight on that one. So that one's gonna be done. When I look at this, I see pink. I see a very pinkish brown, reddish brown. So I'm gonna try my next one with adding green. I'll probably add this green. My stuff has dried a little bit, which is fine. Just have to re-wet it. All right, so now let's try another one. The point is just to get a different color on each donut, a different kind of brown, a different, maybe even shade of black. So I don't know if it picks it up in the camera, but this one definitely has a greenish tint to the brown, but I think it will be a nice one. So don't be stressed about these little highlights. They're so random. On this one, I'm just going to kind of get all of it wet. Not the highlights, because I don't want it to bleed into that yet. But if I get the whole thing wet, then I think I'm going to have better luck with my blending, because then I can add some dark and it will just kind of move on its own. All right, so now I'm going to add my dark. You can see, instead of just, you know, kind of drying right away to the page like it was doing before, I'm going to be able to move it around and do kind of a fade from the dark to the light on the inside. I'm going to do that. I'm going to get some more dark on the inside. So all it takes is just some plain water to spread that out, especially where it was already wet. Now these edges, oh, I wiped on a blue spot on my paper towel. So I don't like these edges you can see on my highlights. That's a little bit annoying to me. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of color around it just so it looks maybe not as stark of a line. Right here's a big one. So if I were smarter, I would have done really, really light lines around. And this ended up just being light on its own. I'm going to leave that. I think that'll be good. And I'm going to wait just a little bit longer before I blend in those highlights so you can see how that looks. So I'm going to do a different color now. I'm going to try for a really, really dark donut. So I'm going to start with my really saturated blue, my saturated red, tiny bit of yellow just to offset the purple. And you know, at Maverick they have these donuts that are I'm guessing they're like huckleberry donuts. They're just these purpley donuts, and so this black, I'm assuming, will take on a little bit of a purpley hue, and that's fine with me. There is such a thing as purple donuts. I'm just going to blend this one out. I got the water drop right there. Blending dark colors is really fun because there is such a difference. This is so nice. So this one is being a little bit more workable than the brown was, and I don't know the reason for that. Each color is different, and each day is different because of humidity and temperature, and you know, just how fast things dry. So you have to be willing to just play with it and change up what you normally do. I'm going to add more dark on the inside of this, the very inside ring, and just kind of let it spread. Ooh, see, that was fun. When it's wet, the color can move anywhere else that's wet. If it's dry, it stays where you put it. Gonna do a little bit more of the dark on the side. And blend it out so it doesn't have those, it's almost like frost, snowflakey texture that happens right there, which is sometimes awesome, but maybe not on my donut. Okay, I'm gonna go back to this one now and see how they will blend. I'm gonna grab a tiny bit of my brown to just add some color, and I'm gonna be using these circle strokes because they will be noticeable. Okay, I'm gonna leave it at that. So they're not solid white, but they're not as blended in as they were on the side. And with this dark one, let's just do it right now. We'll just blend them out and see how they go. Okay, so these ones are gonna have a little bit of a line here, so I'm gonna go back in with some dark to kind of make those blend into the center a little bit more. I don't like that line. Okay, I've got a crying baby, so I'm gonna go make him happy, and then we'll do some more. Okay, I have a happy baby, so I can keep going. Now as this dried, this huckleberry donut is very purple, and I want to try something dark that's not quite so purple. So we add yellow. I think this is going to be a nice one. So let's, over here, I've got to make that work in my mind. Make sure that's going to be a circle. Okay, so this time I'm going to be smart about this. I'm going to have a very light color on my brush that I'm going to use for the outlines of these. And you don't have to do outlines if you want to just wing it as you're filling in, but as I have tried that, I keep forgetting to put them in. So now I don't know if they're really this dark of donuts. Sometimes you can get some, you know, chocolatey ones or something, but the purpose is to teach us how to use these colors, so forgive me. See, that blends in really well with my lines around my highlights. That's the goal. All right, so it's filled in, but I would like to do darker around both the outside and the inside. It just looks, it looks more realistic if you can get more dimension in there. I'll blend it out just a little. I really like how light it is on the top right there. Okay, so I'm probably gonna leave it at that. Do some real quick swipes on the inside of these. And leave it. Okay, so I wanna go back to brown. I keep looking at this one by me. I've got this. This is a good color of a donut. That's just a good glazed donut. And so to try and get something like that from my last one, which is here, you can tell this has a lot more yellow. And so we're just gonna try and add a bit of yellow to our brown. So something to see here, this had dried. And when it dries, sometimes it goes a weird color that you just don't realize. So it dried green, but as I get it wet, for some reason, it's just not green. That's just something that happens. So that is my brown. I'm gonna add a lot of yellow to it. Really warm it up. I'll add a little bit of red to it just to get any green tint out. But it's just gonna be a really, really warm color. I mean, tiny, tiny bit of red. Okay, I'm gonna try that. I want to warm it up on this side. Let's just see how we do here. That's a big donut. But it is what it is. I think this one's gonna turn out a great color. So this time I'll try and not do my little highlight marks before. And I'll just start filling it in. So you can see, if you have been paying that close of attention, I've kind of done it different each time. Sometimes I'll go and get the dark blending out from the inside before I get the very middle light color. I don't know. There's not a right or wrong way to do it. You just have to keep playing and figure out what's best for you. And obviously there isn't a best for me because I keep doing it different. All right, because it's wet, it's gonna blend out pretty well. Okay, I like that color for donut. However, I'm still gonna go darker. The contrast is good. All right, I'll leave it at that and do some swipes on the inside. I like that one. It warmed up my whole painting. I need to do something warm down here too. So I'm gonna try and just add more yellow. Hopefully it won't be too blaringly yellow, but it will be different than the rest, so. I don't know why I have to do that. That's just how it's gotta be. Yep, this will definitely be yellow. Let's just say this is like a lemon flavored donut. It did work well last time to not have drawn in my highlights before. At least made it so there weren't any lines. Because I was doing it like this as I went, so we'll do that. Make sure you can see. Still wanting darker around the edges, so I'll just keep doing layers until I get it how I want it. I still want it darker, so I'm actually gonna do something crazy. I'm adding some of my black to this color. It's just really desaturated now, so I wanted to get something darker just for those edges. Okay, I do kind of still want it darker, but I might just leave it because I'm kind of out of the brown. Okay, so I like that too. Now we just have like maybe a tiny little spot for one here and an edge there to finish up. I decided to do a really nice chocolatey brown donut. And the way I got this color was pretty much by mixing as if I were mixing black. And then at the end, adding a lot of red. All right, let's see how I can do this. Now, in addition to this brown, I'm gonna frost it. We're gonna see how it looks to do a little bit of frosting. So I've got this red and I'm going to really thin it out because I want it to be pink, much more pink. And there we go. We'll just kind of let it be random along the edges. I'm assuming there's not going to be a donut hole showing on this side. Okay. I'm going to have to darken that because it's got a dark brown donut underneath, but I'll come back after and do that. So I just want to kind of figure out where my frosting is going to be at least. It's okay that it's blending in a little bit. I'm going to have a really stark line with it later. That is a nice brown. So while I'm waiting for that to dry, I do need to wait for it to dry. So because this brown is nice, I'm just going to do one more over here. Go back in with my dark. Okay, I think I'll leave it at that. Change my mind. I'm grabbing just a little piece of paper towel, kind of dotting the middle so that there's a little bit more of a difference in the color. Okay, going back to the frosting. It's okay for the very outer edge to be a dark red because I'm going to blend that into the center. So it'll give it a nice edge without making it a red frosting. It'll still be pink. All right, so now I blend that in. But now you kind of have to remember that I'm actually lifting that a little bit. If you remember from last class, I can kind of get it wet and lift it so that just the very edge has that dark color on it. Okay, so what I was going to say is, if my donut goes, let's see how much you can see. if my donut goes here, I'm gonna have a donut hole right barely where you can't see, but the center of the donut hole is dark. And it will be the same with frosting. So we have to show that there is something there. And we'll blend that out also. And that gives more of a hint that there is a center right there. So that's a fun little colored one in there. And then sprinkles or something fun you could do after it's completely dry. Has to be completely dry. I ended up not loving this big old open spot right here. So I'm going to show you how we can kind of layer them. So you could fill up your whole page if you wanted. So we're going to start just, you know, the same way that we have been. Get our outer edges and our inside edges pretty dark so that we can blend them. Make sure that the donuts that you're touching are super, super dry. Now our highlights, if this is actually underneath, it's not going to have near as many highlights. So we'll see if we even leave those ones there. Kind of like that. Okay. So not only around the edges do we have to have dark like normal, but wherever it's touching a donut, there's going to be a shadow from that donut. So there's going to be some there. So it kind of is taking out any place that we could really have for a highlight, which is fine. It will show that this one is further down, further back, more behind. I like that, but it's still not dark enough to me around the edges. So I'm going to just start doing some mixing to get a darker. It's going to be a bit purpley, but I need something a bit darker for back there. And the same areas that we just said. So we'll go around the donuts and around the outside. So you decide how you want to compose your paper, and I'd love for you to bring them next week just to show, because some of these at my class tonight, I don't know if they'll really finish their paper either. I'm hoping that they'll maybe finish at home and still bring them so everybody can see. Okay, I might leave it like that. And I can't just have one underneath, so I'm probably gonna do a couple more, but I will just keep playing and show you the end result. This is my end result. I put another one underneath here, added another frosting, put some sprinkles on the bottom. Anyway, it's pretty cool looking for being a simple thing to do. All right, that's it for this lesson.